For those of you on the YouTube stream, the show will commence in about 1 minute. See you soon. Hello, and welcome along. It is that time of the day again. It's time for a show here on Slay Radio, and hopefully also on YouTube. I have fiddled with a few things, and I'm worried that I may have busted something up. I don't know. It's hard to tell. But hello, first of all, to everyone who's listening in. I see a number of recognizable faces in the chat. I see Kraut Guy, I see Conductor R. I hope you guys can hear me. Please give me some sort of indication, just a wave or something, to know that everything is honky-dory. And in the meantime, I will try to ascertain whether or not the other pieces of the puzzle are working as intended. There is supposed to be a live stream running as well, but YouTube always takes a bit of time. In any case, you should be able to be on PmpVsXMas.com and see the live stream pop and join in the chat there. Yeah, that's maybe a good place to start. I'm gonna chuck on a tune as I get this very highly professional, well put together show up and running. All of this obviously planned from the get-go, and yeah, and we'll hopefully have a good time. I have a script, I have a whole thing. I actually have quite a few topics to talk about, but first of all, I want things to be running fine. So let me play for you. Let's take the... Oh, I really love this one. Why don't we start with this one? Dax's version of Outrun Magical Sound Shower, Dax at the Rio. I have actually played Outrun on the original arcade machine. There goes the bed, by the way. I played Outrun on the original arcade machine in Japan, Tokyo, a while back. So yeah, this has significant meaning to me. Anyway, in the meantime, while I try to sort out what's going on here, here's Dax with Outrun. and there's a little bit of dead air for you there. Again, just underlining the fact that this is a very, very professional show. I've been checking into what's going on YouTube, and it looks like the stream was set to private for some reason, which is very strange. I should be able to share a link to the stream itself, but it should also pop on PmpVsXMas.com once the API, that is to say the YouTube API, sort of decides, hey, now it's okay for you to watch this live stream. That being said, I haven't done, I mean, this is maybe the 8th, 9th show I'm doing on YouTube. So, well, maybe that's not entirely true. More like maybe 10th show or something. But yeah, I can see it's now popped on their site. So I would be surprised if it did not pop on the PmpVsXMas.com page as well. It always takes a little while for it to pop there. So in the meantime, until that finally gets going, I'll just say hello to people who are hanging out in the chat. LP Chip is around. I saw Cracks Ultima. Shargo is saying good morning, and I'm saying good evening to all of you. Thank you all for joining me. I do hope the site kind of kicks it together, because the whole purpose of having the site run is to kind of have this integrated chat. I don't know how fun it is to have the chat and the stream on separate pages. But like I said, this is some stuff that I've sort of put together with sticky tape. But I am a little bit surprised that it has yet to figure things out. Also, it takes about a minute for it to check what's going on. So yeah, it's not completely foolproof. It's sort of trying to figure things out. Hopefully, all this will get up and running within a minute or two. So let's play another song, and hopefully things will have sorted themselves by then, and then I'll get into a bit about the script and what I'm doing. So how about a little bit of... Yeah, let's take this. I haven't heard this in a while. Let's take a bit of Drew with Completo. All right, that was a little bit of patchwork duct tape sort of fixing things. Man, there was a lot of shit that just wasn't working at the beginning. And it makes me all the more appreciative that the things that do work are pretty much fully automated. So no longer do I need to, actually need to update the stream title. I think I've told people that before. PmpVsXMas just kind of does a very ugly job, but it's the only way of doing it right now. But it does a very ugly job of logging in on my behalf on slayradio.net and actually updating the title stream. So while I was plugging away, that was just getting taken care of behind the scenes, which is, goddamn, I cannot emphasize how much that kind of clears the mental space. Couple of public service announcements. One for Tub 64, who says, Gazoo, hello at first. Please reset my old account as I seem to have input wrong data. I would recommend first that you try a password reset via email. If you enter so basically the only unrecoverable scenario, even though PmpVsXplay.com, which by the way is owned and run by me, the only way you should be in an unrecoverable situation is if your username has been taken by yourself and you put in an email address that isn't yours. Yes, then you're screwed. You have now locked that nickname to an email address that will not release itself. Anyway, that's a thing, Tub, so try that first. Mostly because as I'm doing the show, I'm pretty preoccupied. So taking care of user issues, I'm more than happy to try and do, but it's a little more of a mental additional task while I'm just trying to get out my head straight and get this shit sorted. I'm happy to see that the stream is now up and running and is available on PmpVsXplay.com. So if you want to be part of the visual output of the show, you need to register there. I think Kraut Guy was looking into that and was saying, hey, I got to hand over my personal data. Yes, that is true. You do need to do that. But you're basically handing it over to me. So if you're not comfortable doing that, hey, I totally get it. There is actually a privacy policy, and I do try to adhere to it. But I'll also be the first to admit this site is probably going to go through a bunch of iterations. And hello, Crax Ultima, who joins us on the chat. And before Crax Ultima, Immortal was joining us, or as Boz would probably say, Immortal. And I had a listen. So Immortal did a show with Phased Based, and that always throws me. I really want to call Phased Base. Well, I want to call Phased Based phased bass without the D at the end. But I had to listen to those guys. They did a show. I think Shargo pointed me in that direction. And first of all, it was tons of fun. I think I don't know what it is. The Dutch are always such jovial people. And these two dudes are no exception. So I would, if you kind of just want to laugh along a bit, you can listen to their show. And I mentioned them particularly because they've gone ahead and done a fantabulous job of plugging PmpVsXplay for me. And since we've just come off of having such an awesome start, to the show without any issues at all, it was just perfect from the get-go. I think now is a great time to plug PmpVsXplay a bit more. So I'd say take it away, Immortal and Phase Base, and just plug the fucking shit out of this thing. Why don't you?
How's going the software? Gazoo is building his own DJ software.
Cool.
Which is awesome.
How?
Yeah, yes, it's. I think it's really tailored to touchscreen stuff. I don't have a touchscreen. It's called PmpVsXplay. Let's plug it here. Let's do some commercial stuff.
Why not?
PmpVsXplay, it has its own site. It's awesome. You have to use it. It's very professional software for every DJ out there. It has awesome connections to outside stuff and social media thingies and YouTubing awesomeness. And that's why you need to get it. It's
buy us.
Yes, well, yeah, it's I think I'm crazy using Tractor.
Give me your wallet.
Ooh. I'm getting a non-descriptive briefcase of money from Gazoo. We just plugged Gazoo's software. It's awesome.
I don't like that unbiased opinion.
Such an unbiased opinion. Yeah, no, true. we tested a lot of DJ software here at the Immortal Hideout. I think I'm gonna call this.
And it all went to shit.
In our man cave. And it was all terrible. We missed options and we could not touch it. We did not feel it.
No.
And then along came Gazoo's software and it was...
What's wrong with you?
Well, I think that's enough.
God, I have to say, God, I just love. I think it's a laugh and a half. I mean, obviously, yeah, I'm pretty biased on this because hey, they're talking about something that I built that, for the record, neither Immortal nor Phased Based have seen nor touched. At most, what they might have done is, for a brief time about a year ago, I had like a pre-alpha version of it available for download, and that version has been long since taken down. Not because I'm against distributing it at all, mostly because I kind of did a lot of work on it, and then I was like, having this old version up is kind of crummy. I should just wait till I have a new kind of half-assed, half-tested thing up and running again. So yeah, cheers for Immortal and Phased Based for bothering to talk up Storm about PmpVsXMas Play. And yeah, he concurs. Never saw nor touched it. Yes, indeed. But I am using it. This is not like literally every show. I'm using a horrendously ugly looking UI because I haven't had the time or money to pay a proper graphics designer to put something nice and sleek together. So it's really a very clunky thing here. But I am using it every show. It serves as a test bed to make sure everything's up and running. And someone was mentioning something in the chat. What was it? Yeah, Crax Ultima says, can have both streams playing at once. Yes, listening in on Slay Radio and over YouTube is not recommended. I guess either mute YouTube if you're watching the video, or mute Slay Radio. And Mace Ace also says, hey, he's being attacked from all angles, apparently. People are chatting at him, and he's watching a stream on YouTube, and whatever this PmpVsXMas Play thing is. Yes, the world is confusing, Mace Ace. I couldn't agree more. It is a difficult time we are all facing, living and existing in the world as is. It's tricky. But hey, I hope you'll stick around anyway. And I do appreciate the large number of people joining the chat and, being part of this cool C64 output. But this show is not obviously just about PmpVsXMas Play. It's also about Slay Radio, and it's about Commodore 64 remixes. So let's play some requests. Crax Ultima was in with a request quite early. Actually, Kraut Guy was in a bit earlier. I haven't forgotten your request, Kraut Guy. But I'm going to play Crax Ultima, who wanted a bit of Gross Pixels with Shockwave Rider. He says an upbeat track to wake up from. So here you go. And there we have a little bit of Gross Pixels with Shockwave Rider. Yeah, for a moment there, I thought it was Shockwave Rider, but no, it is indeed Gross Pixels with Shockwave Rider. And that was requested by Crax Ultima. So thank you very much for requesting that, Crax. Appreciate it. And Crax is in the chat. He's listening along. And I've had people ask me a little about the giving feedback about the UI for the chat or any other aspects of the show. And let me say two things. First of all, number one, the system chat, everything is like pre-alpha, alpha, super alpha. And in case anyone's wondering, usually the way alphas and betas are used in software is that alpha is when something is labeled feature complete, as in like it has all the features we expect to launch with, and then it progresses to a beta stage, which is like now there's some stability there, and we're trying to make it more stable, and then after that it's basically release candidates, more or less. A couple of users are mentioning some choppy issues. All I can say is there's zero droppages zero drops here informed by the chats, by the broadcasting systems. So it's likely an in-between stop or on your end if you're having issues, I'm afraid. And also, Tub64 asks, is PlanMixPlay a whole DJ software in sort of star quotes? Well, you asked a mouthful there. No, because whole would sort of imply that it's finished and has everything you need, and it by no means has that, Tub64. Yes, I'll just get back to your question, but Mace Ace asked a question that I can answer very quickly, which was whether the YouTube feed will be archived with a video. That would be cool. Yes, it will. That's the exact purpose of the show running the way it does. As for drops on Slay Radio, yeah, I don't know. That's a bummer. There's very little I can do about that at the current time. In fact, I don't even have some proper displays telling me whether or not or how things are dropping or not. So yeah, that's a bummer if that's happening. All I can advise at this point is to possibly either reconnect to the relay or switch over to the YouTube stream. Getting back to Tub64 question, yeah, no, it's by no means whole. It's sort of quite bare bones. But what is there is very unique and does some stuff that no other software does. Like, for example, this integrated chat environment we're broadcasting through this sort of C64 broadcasting. And I hope to do a lot of more stuff, and I really hope to update the chat as well. I'm working hard to try and get new features in, but it takes time, my friends. It takes time. So let's pass some more of that time with Kraut Guy, who requested this like about 10 hours or so ago, but was kind enough to re-request it. He wanted actually this to be played for Tub, so that's very convenient. And he said he would surely listen to the show, i.e. Tub. So Tub64, you're getting a few greetings from Kraut Guy. He's requesting this along with some greetings for you. It is Gerd Ball with Last Ninja Wasteland's in-game memorial mix. So Kraut Guy and Tub, this is for you. And that was Gerd Ball with Last Ninja Wasteland's in-game memorial mix. All right. So I feel like we have this topic. We've had this on repeat a few times, but I will cover it very quickly again. And probably because I love engaging about something in regards to my passion project. Immortal is just asking a little bit about, maybe replacing the chat as is on the website. And look, I will be the first to admit that the chat on the site is currently very bulky. It's nowhere near as user-friendly as many of the other chats that are available, Discord, or even YouTube's integrated chat, etc., etc. So the thing is, in my opinion, the short answer is it takes a lot of time to put things together. And now that this stuff is finally working, the stuff that I built, I'm inclined to stick with it for now. Obviously, if there were maybe twice or three times the number of people in here, it would get very crowded very quickly, especially because I've been sticking with having this C64 style chat. And look, I'm going to keep that going for now as well, because since I'm not really promoting the show outside of any circles except Slay Radio, the growth is, 0.0 times a million decimals 1. Like, there's anytime someone new comes to the show, is because maybe a friend of theirs said, like, hey, there's this show on, do you want to give it 2 seconds worth of a listen? And then they're gone. So when it comes time to maybe grow the audience or grow the show somehow, then it becomes a bigger consideration. And also, in the meantime, I do, of course, apologize that the user experience isn't more streamlined. It is clunky, I will admit that. But it's you'll have to make do for now, I'm afraid. All right, it's already over half an hour, and I haven't even run my mouth as much as I wanted. So let me just very quickly cover some of the topics I was hoping to get through, and I actually don't think we're going to. I want to talk a bit about Fallout 4, a little bit about influencers, a little bit about, what do we have here? Choosing beggars, but we might not get to them. Talking a little bit about currency exchange, and a conversation I had with Tub64 earlier today. But like I said, I'm not sure we're going to get to all that. But what we are going to get to is another request for now. Let's play another request. This one for LP Chip, who says, hey Gazoo, can you play us Moog Sid Factory 1? Smiley face, thanks, period, very big smiley face. Well, a very big smiley face to you, LP Chip. Let's see here. Going to put that there. All right. So yes, LP Chip, more than happy to put this together for you. Here comes Moog with Sid Factory 1. Moog Sebastian Bachlinski with Sid Factory 1, requested by LP Chip. So LP Chip, thank you very much for requesting that. Let's get to the topics. Fallout 4. I've been playing a bit of Fallout 4, and until today, I would probably have said that's a pretty polished, at this stage. I can't speak for it upon release, but right now it seemed, well, up until today, I would have said it seemed like it was, working as intended. And then today I had, I think, 4 crashes to desktop in a row, and it was sort of always the same thing. It was me loading a game, getting into a battle that kind of surprised me, and it was the same one all 4 times, and then getting the shit beat out of me, and as soon as the game opted to try and reload the quick save, the game would crash. But that is what it is. It feels very much like Fallout 3, basically, with more polish, in my opinion. And I'm sure there's a bunch of Fallout fans that would lynch me alive for saying that, because, Fallout is a big passion for a lot of people, and I mean, like, a lot of people. I think, by and large, Bethesda's done a good job with the franchise. If you want examples of intellectual properties that have not been handled very well, I would say take a look at companies like Lionhead or Electronic Arts. Dungeon Keeper Mobile comes to mind, in case anyone is familiar with that. Mass Effect Andromeda also comes to mind. And I wouldn't call myself a Bethesda apologist, so I'll gladly jump on the wagon and say Fallout 76, their latest release in the Fallout series, sounds thoroughly underwhelming. But I want to highlight that I think this underwhelming nature comes partially due to the stark opposition of the otherwise stellar showings in the series. Fallout 3, Fallout 3, Fallout New Vegas, and Fallout 4 have all reviewed, I think, over 80% on like OpenCritic and Metacritic, or at least almost. Maybe I think New Vegas is 70, was it 79? Or maybe it's 84. Anyway, they were like 1 point off from getting a big cash bonus, which just, boy, that's a whole nother stinking story. But anyway, so I think it's always important to keep in mind the difference between a game turning out really well and a game turning out poorly is not 50-50, like it seems like a lot of entitled internet dwellers seem to think. Think of it more as like a 1 in 10 chance of being good, or maybe 1 in 100 to make a good game, and then like 5 out of 10 to make a mediocre one, and 4 out of 10 to make a bad, terrible one. Unfortunately, it seems like with Fallout 76, they've hit the fairly common average category. And yeah, just it really gets me at times. And I know this is like yelling at the sidewalk in a way for all the good it'll do me, but the stupidity of people writing things like, they only had to change this one thing and it would be a great game, or why didn't they just implement X? When X would perhaps take a team 2 to 3 times the size of the budget and blow the development timeline by, I don't know, another half a year or something. Yeah, anyway, asking people to be more informed is, again, that's kind of like shouting at the sidewalk as a hobo. But anyway, when speaking of Fallout 3, or rather Fallout series in general, I have something to say about a different problem that I've perceived recently. But let me step back a bit, because I'm trying to tie this into what I perceive as a growing news source for youths, which is influencers. Ugh, that horrible term. But it is, look, it's a growing phenomenon. And I don't think it's unfair to say that a lot of youths are getting their informations and opinions from this new source of influencers. And to me, one of the key differences between this new informational source, that is to say influencers, and the classic sources like TV, magazines, and newspaper, is that I think people establish a sort of an emotional connection with these informational sources. Sure, back in the day, maybe you could have a favorite reviewer in an old gaming magazine, or maybe there was a news anchor you really liked, but there was a much harder line between the news source and the news sink. And these days of the hard lines are gone. I mean, these old news sources still exist, but they become far less prevalent. And instead, there's now a growing bunch of influencers, and Twitter and Instagram, and. and getting closer to these news sources have never been easier. And there's a problem with that, in my opinion. And I should point out that despite the fact that I do shudder at the risk of being labeled an influencer myself, that the connection between you, the dear listener, and I is one that I would also put in this more connected box. There's far less distance between you and me than, say, a news anchor and you. Because I can see, you know, Shargo, for example, is asking if there are any chat commands, and no, I'm afraid there isn't. You know, I can directly have a very short discourse with people on various topics on the show. So I see a bit of a problem, and I'm going to explore this problem further after the song. I like to break up my topics just a little bit, just so I don't bore all of you guys to death now that I've spoken for about 4 or 5 minutes. So let's talk a bit more about this problem that I perceive after we've played Macke with Hell on Earth Spells Game Over, requested by none other than Shargo himself.
I can still hear my mother yell,
"Son, time for bed!"
and I'd put my pajamas on, brush my teeth, and go to bed. But then I'd hear something in the dark. I would hear my computer talking to me. It would say, "Come on, dude, just one more mission, just one more level." And I just had to get up and do what I must.
and then there is a very long fade out to the end, so I'm just going to jump on top of this and burp a little. Excuse my professionalism. Back to the topic at hand. I was saying there was a problem with these new news sources that are happening. That is to say, the new media sources, influencers, Instagramming, YouTube personalities. And the problem, partially... thanks, Cracks Ultima. The problem, partially, as I see it, is an emotional one. We tend to want to agree with people we like, possibly even disagree with people we dislike. Also, my pleasure, Shargo. This is, in my opinion, a possible contributor to the sort of idiotic mob mentality follower swarm the internet is known for, which is arguably why large influencers have, in my opinion, well, actually, this isn't arguable. I think this is fact. I think large influencers, that is to say, an influencer with a large following, has an increased responsibility for using their influence and soapbox ethically and morally. It's especially concerning that some of the biggest influencers are so young, basically before ever being educated about ethics and morals. Like, take me, for example. I thought I knew a lot of shit back when I was a teenager, but basically I just knew shit. Ethics and morals, theory of knowledge, etc. It's something most broadcasters should learn about. The whole sort of FCC stepping in and letting everyone know, hey, you can't just plug a product without telling your audience that this is a paid promotion, kind of, smacks of there being issues. And I wanted to highlight 2 occasions where I myself have strongly disagreed with some YouTube personalities I'm otherwise fairly in sync with. And the first of these pertains to Fallout itself. So there's a YouTuber known as Many a True Nerd who is pretty large. I forget the follower count, but significant enough. And this dude has quite the hard-on for the Fallout series and has made a long over an hour episode on why Fallout 3 isn't as bad as everyone says it is. And in this case, apparently compared to New Vegas, I think, and to a lesser extent, Fallout 4. Just as an aside, I think he's merely seeing the rotten nuts which rattle the most. It's a Danish saying I love saying. Because going by the general review scores, Fallout 3 reviews a lot better than both Fallout New Vegas and Fallout 4. So at the time of release, it would seem as though Fallout 3 was, much bigger comparatively, at least in terms of its reception. Anyway, in this hour-long episode, he comments a bit on the first-person shooting aspect towards the very end of the video, and a system called VATS. Anyone who's played Fallout will know that this is short for Vault-Tec Assisted Targeting System. The latter basically pauses, or in Fallout 4 slows things down, the game, allowing you to take a more turn-based approach to engaging enemies with firearms. And this is more reminiscent of Fallout 1 and 2, which were these isometric top-down sort of adventure/strategy games. But now, in Fallout 3 and 4 and New Vegas, it's first-person or third-person if you want. And this system, VATS, basically lets you play it as kind of more of a role-playing. So whether you're shooting at enemies in the standard first-person shooter or using VATS, they're both a means to the same end. In other words, you can either opt to sort of choose either one whenever you'd like, kind of hop between them, or exclusively use one throughout the entire playthrough. So in the clip I'm about to play for you, he talks a bit about the balance of these two systems in the different games. Man, I should really have prepared of course I have prepared this in advance because this show is, if nothing else, super professional, like I said. So, with that in mind, here's the clip where Many a True Nerd talks a little bit about these systems.
Unquestionably though, New Vegas got the balance slightly better, adding in iron-sight aiming, but maintaining some of Fallout 3's slight clunkiness, so VATS remains an attractive option. But Fallout 4, I think, shows the risks of what happens if you make shooting too polished in a Fallout game. You see, I've played a lot of Fallout 4, and a comment that I've seen pop up a lot, which has never shown up when I make videos about Fallout 3 or New Vegas, is, why do you use VATS so much? And that worries me, because so many people asking that question means a lot of people have got so used to playing Fallout 4 as a straight first-person shooter that they don't seem to know how many of the game's mechanics work anymore, because they've never had any reason to learn them. Simply, a high-luck, frequent critical build is one of the most ludicrously powerful builds in Fallout 4. The amount of damage each crit does, and how many you can constantly be using and building is ridiculous. Fallout 4 genuinely had some really interesting new perks, like Penetrator, Gung Fu, and Critical Banker, which created some really cool character builds, especially with the lower number of special starting points leading to tough compromisers. But plenty of players seem to be totally oblivious to that, and just play it as an FPS, which is fine, really. Play the game as you like. It's just a shame Fallout 4 creates a scenario where people can get by without ever learning the more intricate game mechanics, when traditionally Fallout rewarded you for understanding how things worked. This is a matter of personal opinion, of course. It's definitely not fundamentally good that Fallout 3 has clunky gunplay, but it does make sense if you think that Fallout should be, at least in part, an RPG. Because our character shouldn't be a crack shot straight out of the vault, just because the player might be.
So that's a little bit about what he has to say, and I think he completely goes off the deep end towards the end there, and I'll tell you why in a bit, but first a few redeeming factors about his opinion. He does say play the game however you like, and that's a big one, because holy fucking shit do people have strong feelings about how you should or shouldn't play a game, and very often they are all completely worth ignoring and superfluous. Also, he does say it's a matter of personal opinion and not fundamentally good that Fallout has clunky gunplay. But as I said, then he completely goes off the deep end. Like, he goes off the rails when he says that it actually makes sense in Fallout 3 to have clunky gunplay. No, 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 no. Bad mechanics never make sense, ever. Don't justify them with some crazy story or plot point. It's utter nonsense. Like, it's a ridiculous opinion. It's very obvious that many a true nerd likes the VAT system a lot and feels that it's an integral part of Fallout. He is disappointed that most players playing Fallout 4 don't use it. Full disclosure, when I play Fallout 4, I barely use it myself. But the solution here is to be critical that VATS isn't better integrated or more necessary or something else. But it honestly depends a bit on the vision of the developers. There are games where entire aspects of them are skippable if the player so desires. It's less common these days, but a few of you people might remember North and South or Star Control 2. These games were sort of part strategy, part action, and I'm going to burp again. Maintaining a high level of professionalism here. Those two games had action-based elements in a strategy game, which could be entirely skipped if the player only really cared about the strategy element. And you could also play both games as purely action games if you didn't want the strategy. If the developers of Fallout truly saw VATS as an alternative as opposed to a more fleshed out option, then not guiding the player to one or another is totally fine. But if they saw them as more complementary, they should have endeavored to make VATS more appealing, and definitely not by making the FPS shooting worse, but by somehow giving the player an incentive to use VATS. What that is would take some serious thinking to pin down, but it feels a bit like the two systems are best seen as alternatives, in which case making them as good as they can possibly be is the right choice. Think a bit about action fighting games. The best ones throw obstacles in the way that forces the player to use the entire arsenal of moves at their disposal. Batman Combat is an excellent example of this. Each new enemy type forces the player to adapt and use a unique combination of existing abilities to defeat them. There are some abilities that are always going to be a bit more flair than useful, and that's fine. I bring this example up because VATS and first-person shooting in Fallout aren't really like moves that Batman has, where the game should force the player to make the most out of all of them. It's a little more like choosing between keyboard or a controller. And yes, you can argue players are then gliding over a large part of what used to make Fallout Fallout. But by the same token, you could implement tank controls in Resident Evil 4. Arguably it has that, but it's the first Resident Evil game to have some proper third-person aiming rather than just a general direction like the earlier Resident Evil games. So yeah, look, games evolve, and honestly, if I have to be very harsh, and this is a bit over the line, and who gives a fuck, because, you know, nobody really cares what I think, but if you do, I think many a true nerd should just be pleased that they cater to people who wanted VATS, and suggest that people give it a go if they like it, and if they don't, then do the first-person shooting thing. Like, that's sort of, yeah, that's sort of the thing. And also, Wakani is apparently off to have lunch with who? His family. yeah, have a good lunch, I guess. So that's number 1. When we come back, number 2, in the meantime, I'm going to play you guys a bit of Morty with Sweet featuring Gibbs. So this is a long one. Tuck yourselves in for a little bit of Morty. that Morty. He can, bit of Morty there for you with Sweet featuring Gibbs. Now, for the second part of disagreeing with influencers, and if you guys thought... So the first one, look, the first one is, I would say, a slight difference of... Oh, wait. Yes, thank you. More professionalism is needed. The first one is a bit of a difference of opinion. I remain pretty firmly rooted that, and I'm sure if you called out many are true. Look, the way he says it, clearly he doesn't want the gameplay to be bad. He just wants people to play play Fallout and use VATS a bit more. So this is just kind of the way he puts it. That's a little bit strange, if you ask me. But this next one, holy shit, is this one where the person I'm about to highlight is just so in the wrong that it's crazy. And any of his follower army that thinks that he actually has a good point here is also insane. And to be honest, they're probably not insane. They're just kids. And kids don't always get the ramifications of everything. So I'm going to lay it out here. This is about a young creator. And when I say young, could actually be in his late teens, maybe even like 20, 21. It's kind of hard to tell by the voice. I'm tempted to say that this young gentleman is perhaps in his teenage years still. And one of the reasons is because he's actually gone ahead and been a slight cleverer than me and not shown his face anywhere. In fact, he is a popular faceless content creator named I Hate Everything, or goes by the moniker IHE. And generally, I think his stuff is quite entertaining, good, and he's in the upper echelon who has like a critical mass of followers and can now focus most of his day-to-day energy in just putting out content. He generally reviews shitty movies and talks about things he hates, tabloids, spinners, Reddit. You know, they're all kind of ranty and ravey and generally sort of meant as a jokey thing. If he were to, so the thing I'm about to criticize, if he were to actually say, oh, all my rants are just, kind of for fun, then in this particular instance, I would say no. The fun kind of stops here. But generally, I think that his hyperbole, or hyperbole, or however you want to pronounce that, I think it's hyperbole. His hyperbolic aspects are balanced. See, there I go. I said hyperbole, and then I go ahead and say hyperbolic, but I don't think you say hyperbolic. You either say hyperbolic or hyperbole, I think. Man, I should know this stuff. Anyway, about a year or so ago, he had his account on Twitter suspended. And he has been inappropriately suspended before. So I was quite curious when I saw a video popping up and talking about this. So without any more prompting or maybe even bias, I'm just going to play the clip from a portion of the show where he talks about being suspended from Twitter, where he talks about the reason for him being suspended, because there's a bit of a lead up to it, but here he gets to like the heart of the matter of like, hey, here's the reason apparently he had his account suspended. Yeah, so this is IHE talking about being suspended. Let's take a listen.
But then I found out the actual reason my account was banned. So when I went back on Twitter, I was greeted with a new screen. Your account has been locked. To unlock your account, you must do the following. Delete tweets that violate our rules. Okay, that's fine by me. Let's see what tweet it was then. So here's the thing. I guess it kind of was a threat, but let me just show you it. It's the only way I can explain this. I'm going to kill your entire family. So yeah, that kind of is a threat, except @Jamie Beltman is my brother, like my real life brother, who I've grown up with, and we have the same parents. So this tweet, the joke was, I am in his family, so I'm threatening to basically kill myself. So basically, I was suspended for a joke at my own expense. Suspended for a tweet that didn't take into account any context or details whatsoever. I guess someone must have reported this, or some automatic bot must have scanned for the word kill or something, but this is the kind of tweet that can jeopardize your entire account. Forget about all the actual hateful people on Twitter that tweet the most heinous, disgusting garbage day after day, and my completely harmless ridiculous, silly little tweet is what gets my account suspended. Not just a warning, like it was actually taken down for good. If I didn't know anyone, that would have been it. Because Twitter has no support or contact system. Why on earth I am not verified yet is beyond me.
So that's basically the crux of what he says, among other things, in that show. And a couple of things. Notice how he builds up a lot of comedic effect to leverage his opinion. The tweets even gets, well, so you couldn't see the video, obviously, but the rubber duck noise basically coincides with the tweet, kind of upplaying the innocence or playfulness. There's an audience clap, there's gasps at various points of information reveals. He loads his statements calling other offensive tweets heinous, disgusting garbage, and his own tweet is harmless, ridiculous, silly little tweet. He even says his tweet is a kind of a threat. I would not say the word kind of applies when you're writing, I will kill your whole family. There is no kind of there. It is a threatening statement, end of story. And to me, basically the crux of it to me is when he says, I was suspended for a joke at my expense, a tweet taken without any context or details whatsoever, the answer to that is yes. Yes, 1,000 times yes. This is exactly what happened. And I don't think there's anything wrong with it whatsoever. I don't even believe that it's up for debate whether or not a warning should have been applied instead of an immediate suspension. This is I hate everything, the guy, seeing the problem only, and I mean only from his point of view. If he had for a few minutes pondered why this reaction exists, he might have considered a couple of things that I'm going to list now. Determining context is incredibly difficult. Difficult meaning time-consuming. To actually expect Twitter to try and investigate if a tweet might be a joke or real would take a lot of time. Furthermore, if Twitter were to actually entertain this idea of trying to determine context before identifying threats from non-threats when they're that, I guess, straightforward, they'd likely have a team of lawyers that would point out that while correctly labeling a joke threat as a joke, which has a positive outcome because no action is taken and no one is harmed, incorrectly labeling a credible real threat as a joke would have consequences so large it would make I hate everything's head spin. And if he's even thought about this, he doesn't really give any indication of this whatsoever. He appears utterly oblivious to all of this and instead chastises and ridicules Twitter for daring to take this radical action against him. I do agree with a lot of what he has to say, and I think he's funny, but this is an instance of massive disagreement for me. He is utterly wrong, and that the thing that he's critiquing has to be this way. There is no other way for this to be. Expecting Twitter to go to the trouble of verifying who the person he's making this tweet to try and figure out what relation they are in connection to him is absolutely ludicrous if the joke is just to allow him to make this type of joke, which is effectively what we're talking about here. We're debating whether or not he should be allowed to tweet this silly little thing. Furthermore, if they'd known this still, they have no idea about what his actual feelings are towards his brother. Public and private facing behavior is a very real thing. So again, no. This person, I hate everything, is utterly wrong. Utterly and totally. I would say he should be thankful that he is sort of or he is as big as he is. So it meant that he could pull a few strings and sort things out. And for the record, I am happy that he sorted things out. Like, I wouldn't want this person's, online/Twitter career to just take a massive hit. And it would be an unfortunate end to his audience building. But I do so wish he was less oblivious as to why this happened and a bit tuned more into why. And that he doesn't, he permeates this complete obliviousness to his audience. Like, there are kids in the audience who will go like, oh yeah, that sounds credible. And Twitter should really have, just not banned him or done anything at all. Why didn't they see it's a joke? Like, from what is, from his perspective, a harmless, ridiculous little tweet has to be taken seriously by Twitter. And just to round things off, there's also a bit of conflicting information in his I guess, little video about this, because at the end, he claims that if he had not had the contacts in the Twitterverse, his account would have been down for good. And yet at the very beginning of the clip, the text he reads from Twitter implies that he himself can actually get the account unsuspended by following a set of steps included. I'm not really bringing this up to say he should have done A, B, or C. I'm just saying that it kind of initially sounds like he can actually do some stuff on his own, even if he didn't have these, friends in high places. So there you have it, guys. Another YouTuber that I heard and listened to and generally follow and enjoy the content from. But man, this is, I mean, in the scale of disagreement compared to the previous one, this is a factor of 1 to 1,000. Like him not getting the big picture here is shocking. Anyway, let's play some more music. This is Kronberg with Fairlight East Sussex remix. Kronberg or Kronblom with a bit of Fairlight East Sussex remix. And like Crax Ultima said, good tune. Yes, indeed, Kronberg knows how to make them. I wanted to talk a little bit about choosing beggars, but then maybe I should just... It's really, actually, you can talk up a storm about almost any event if you try, but there just really isn't a lot of meat on the bone here. A couple of weeks ago, I came home from work on a Friday evening, and as I was putting my bike away in the basement bike storage area, I noticed two ladies moving a mattress and, well, sort of just pushing it along the floor. One of them said something to me, and I had my headphones in, so I oblige by taking them out and asking her, excuse me, what did you say? And she says to me, can you help? And look, at times I would say I am selfish, and at times I would say I am quite generous. Towards a stranger who I'll likely never see again, less so generous. So my immediate reaction to that inquisition was, no. I've just gotten home and I'd rather go up to my apartment and relax a bit than help someone move a mattress, if I have to be completely honest about it. And it's again one of those things where I think it's... while I don't believe in karma, I unfortunately do not believe in our universe being a particularly just place. I do believe in doing good deeds just for the sake of doing them, because why not? So, if someone was struggling with something heavy up a staircase, maybe give them a hand, or for example, I've helped ladies with strollers to get off trams or other transportation methods if they didn't have anyone around to help them carry the pram down, stuff like that. Whereas in this case, to me, I instead just inquired why they hadn't paid someone to move the mattress, and then the response to that was, not surprisingly, "Oh, it's just over the street, though." It's like, okay, but you seem to not be quite, if it's that simple, then either you do it, or if it's not that simple, I guess pay someone to help. I don't know. I'll also say maybe I have a bit of sour taste in my mouth from one experience I had as I was leaving Tokyo. I was basically selling all my junk, and the worst position negotiation wise to be in if you're selling your stuff is basically if you're trying to get rid of it all when moving out, because you're basically saying, I have a very small time window which suits me the best, and I'm trying to get rid of it all at once, and ideally not in separate pieces. And I recall wanting to sell my table, and there was only one taker. I was selling, I think it cost 10,000 yen or maybe even double that, and I was selling it for 5,000. And we agree on a price, and a guy comes over, and of course he does the good old, oh, can we maybe make it 1,000 yen cheaper? And that right there, I should probably have stuck to my guns and just said, well, if that's the case, you get nothing. Either you pay the price we agree, because that is I think there's nothing wrong with maybe asking, but then asking in a way where you imply, look, if it's not possible, I'll pay the full amount. I don't know. Generally, it's not very good manners, I would say, to show up and then haggle. Like, either negotiate in advance. But the bigger kick in the teeth came when he then asked, hey, could you help me move it? Because I'm like right over here. And I was like, well, I just want to get rid of it, sure. And by the time we were done, I think it had taken us 20 minutes to get this thing down the street and into his apartment. And at that point, I should probably have said, well, for the moving, that will be 1,000 yen. Like, not only did he haggle me down, I also helped him move the fucking thing. And I will, again, it's such a small, slice of my life, so who gives a shit? But that was certainly an instance where I felt that I let myself be taken advantage of. I should have said to the guy, look, if you don't have anyone to move, I guess I'll help, but that's going to cost you. Like, why don't we then make it an even 5,000 again if you have, otherwise deal with it on your own. But hey, you live and you learn. Speaking of living, not so much learning though. LP Chip, I hope you're living it up. I mean, I also hope you're learning, but you requested Binster with Ghouls and Ghosts, and I'll be more than happy to put that on for you, because it's been a while since we've had that. Oh, and Cracks Ultimate asked how much 1,000 yen is in Aussie dollars. It's not so much. It's like 12, 13 bucks or something. Not the world, really. Anyway, LP Chip, a bit of Binster with Ghouls and Ghosts. That's it is a good tune, and it especially evokes memories of Boz's show, the BBB or the BBKB, and holy fucking shit, Boz has a show on Slay Radio. For those of you not in the know, he also has a show on his own fully licensed radio station called Boz Radio, I believe. But there is actually a live show coming up with Boz. Might as well plug it here. And actually, before, man, we've got a lot of live shows. Usually towards the end, so it's already the last quarter of the show, and usually as we get towards the end, well, really near the ending, I like to plug other people's shows because I think that's a very nice thing to do. And normally looking at it, it's empty, but this time we have something on the 14th, 15th, and 17th. Cracks Ultima, the Ultimate Winter Snows Again show, will be on the regular 8 o'clock in the evening in the Europe time zone, with Cracks Ultima holding it down. Boz with the BBB Crimbo special, and he's back to have a bit of bollocks. And then I will be back as well. Dun dun dun. Also at 8 p.m. What's up with that? Why am I on in the evening? Usually I'm on in the morning. Why is that? I wonder. Really hard to guess. You guys will never, ever figure it out. It's very difficult. But while you tackle that one upstairs... Uh-oh. That's bad. Someone said switch back to the rotational. Are we on the rotational now? Is it... I wonder. Is anyone else hearing me? Have I been booted to the rotational? I have to make sure before I keep going, because this is wondering me here. Rotational. That would be bad. And also, LP Chip says that no rotational. Man, LP Chip, you saying things like that makes me very concerned. Don't concern me. Well, I mean, let me know if there is an issue, but I don't think the problem is on my end, LP Chip. Not in the general streaming sense, I'm afraid. I know it. Once you get a sense of something, I bet it's this. It's got to be this. Let's find evidence that confirms that it's this. But as Krautguide mentioned before, if the issue is sort of localized, and you by far seem to be having the most issues, then I would purport that it's maybe not on my end. In fact, I can confirm there are 0 frames dropped for the YouTube stream. So it's very possible that it's also remember that, internet networking is difficult. It's many different nodes hooked together. So there may be a European node that's experiencing congestion or some such thing. There is no doubt, though, that since I'm broadcasting from down under, that there are more nodes to go through and thus more points of failure. So it's very possible you'll have very stable shows from other people and a less one from me in general. Anyway, getting back to the topic at hand. I had this topic here. This is a little bit of insight into the irregular practice of moving your savings from one country to another that doesn't share the same currency. Because I've had to go through that process myself, and I thought you guys, you probably don't care, but hey, I've got nothing else to say. As phased-based and immortal, no, I'm a very, very chatty Kathy or something. And also, don't worry, LP Chip, I forgive you. It's okay. You switch between whatever streams you want. Anyway, so before the advent of TransferWise and similar products, transferring money between accounts with dissimilar currencies was a costly affair, and effectively it still is, unless you use something like TransferWise. Now, should note up front, I have no connection to them whatsoever. It's just the one I've stuck to so far, but I'm sure a lot of the other currency exchanging systems work. So if you don't worry about it, LP Chip. If you have money in multiple countries with different currencies, you might want to look into TransferWise or an equivalent to help you transfer money in between them, because they offer pretty solid rates and make that process pretty painless. They basically serve as a go-between. You pay locally in one currency and they pay out in the destination account in a different currency. Their rates are, compared to banks at least, quite fair, and the process is quick and painless, as I said. You really think that they're handing me a nondescript briefcase of money, but no, I just enjoy that they've solved this problem that banks just kind of gouge people for. Anyway, Banking regulations are very different per country, and Japan is, of course, super rigid and strict. Using TransferWise there requires you confirm your residency by actually receiving a physical letter with a code inside. But the time I left Japan, I had no knowledge of these services and as such did not set up such an account. If you've heard me speak of the Japanese banking industry, you'll have heard me say it's decades behind, and that's not an exaggeration. Websites are super clunky and not user-friendly. Fees are all over, and there are so many more hurdles to clear when doing day-to-day business. This almost sounds like I'm doing this sort of weird, crazy, high-powered podcast, which I guess I am because this is recorded for posterity. Anyway, the underlying systems in the banking world, in Japan at least, seem to be exposed all the way to the top. So let's say the banking system does all its transfers at 2 p.m. every day. Their system will basically say, if you don't get us the transfer in by 2 p.m., nothing will happen. Whereas in most modern banking systems that have this sort of legacy shit below, the surface obscures this with a sleek veneer that the user never sees past, and the money appears to move immediately between accounts, even though the reality isn't quite so. Despite me not knowing of these services, that is to say TransferWise, I did of course know of hard currency. Good old fashioned, the days before Bitcoin where we had pieces of paper and pieces of metal in our hands and you drop them on a metal surface and they went plinkety plonk. And I also knew that the yen was in a very bad state back in 2014, 2015. If you look at the trading charts on xe.com, for example, it's basically the worst time ever to trade in your yen to something else. So I opted to simply leave all my hard-earned money in Japan. And I had a plan to come back and get them out. So here's what I learned about trying to, go about this the hard currency way, literally. Well, the hard way, literally. Just to be clear up front, a number of you might wonder, why didn't you just do a regular international bank transfer? And, Japan being so far behind means that, first of all, they basically take like $50 cut just for the transfer itself. That's an upfront fee just to do the transfer. Not too bad if you're transferring a massive amount of money, but I would say $50 is still something I would like to keep for myself. The bigger issue, though, is that the receiving bank is the one that determines the conversion rate. And trust me on this, they have terrible rates. Their rates are so shitty because this is the easy and comfortable option. By far, you stand to lose. Their rates are so poor, I would say you stand to lose 5 to 10% of your savings by going through a bank. If you've saved up near, 10 grand or more, that's basically 1 grand gone within one digital transaction. Poof, gone. Vanishamente. Just for them having this electronic transaction go through. Also, I learned that there is at large sometimes a misconception that you're not allowed to take a large amount of money out of a country. Generally, I'd say this is false. There may be regulations in place that if the sum becomes significantly large enough, like, for example, I know that the U.S. has a... if you leave the U.S. for good, there's actually a law in place that can trigger a seizure of your assets beyond a certain amount. I think it's something like if you have over $500,000, which, let's be fair, most people do not, and the Border Patrol thinks that you're actually in the process of moving all your wealth out, then they might seize an amount of that. And I think it's actually quite high. I think it's like 60% or something. It's massive. If you are traveling with a large amount, and I'm not talking $500,000, I'm talking, 20, 30 grand, maybe even 50 grand, it may require declaration. That is to say, you have to declare it at the border, but that doesn't mean anything except for the fact that you have to declare it. Simple as that. I would say there are a number of countries that I definitely would not want to publicly declare this sort of movement of money. But the countries I was going through, Japan and Australia, I wouldn't worry about that. Corruption is pretty low. Other places, you may end up losing a significant chunk of that money just because of corrupt government officials. Also, I do not believe that in a number of cases, you may not need to declare any money while leaving, only when coming in. And that was certainly the case with Japan. I would also highly recommend, but this is sort of, I don't know, they call it, like, in Danish there's another saying that's like mathematics for chickens or something, for like farm chickens. Compare rates and you'll easily earn yourself 10% by doing this. Like, go to currency exchangers, also look at the banks, but look at the banks and then laugh. Exchange rates change every few minutes, so allow for some margin of I don't give a shit. Like, find your best 2 to 3 currency exchangers and kind of stick with those. And there are 2 last points I want to make before we play a request coming up from Crax Ultima. 2 last points. Point number 1. Currency exchanges might actually reject last generation bills despite them being perfectly legal tender. I found that out the hard way. As I was exchanging a large amount of hard cash, they simply separated out certain bills like, nope, we're not taking these, despite the fact that they are perfectly legal tender in all of Japan. All of Japan, all banks, all shops, everyone would take these slightly older bills, but this currency shop was like, nah, we're not having them. Fortunately, I could go to the second best currency shop and get those exchanged as well. Also, there will be a mental cost involved. So I'm not used to having a lot of loose cash on me or at home, and I'd wager most other people aren't either. So the mental cost is, of course, it means a single break-in could basically lose you a couple of years worth of savings if that's the amount of money you have stored somewhere in your mattress. So I will say I was stressing a bit out about it. I was also stressing a bit about choosing the right time to exchange the money because I ideally wanted it done before Christmas, all that sort of stuff. So there is a bit of a mental cost. So at the end of the day, you might ask, was it all worth it? Obviously, that depends on the savings. In my case, I would say it was a resounding yes. Waiting 3 to 4 years before actually exchanging the money meant that the yen weakened from 95.4 to about 81.5 per Australian dollars, which earned me a 4-digit improvement in my return. So that's quite the number. And that amount easily beats inflation, and also I would say beats the mental strain I was put under. So yeah. Anyway, that's a lot of jibbity jabber from me. I have one last jibbity jabber thing, but we'll leave that for after this request. DJ Mitch, it's a Noisy Pillars Tune 2, the Ketchup Girls Mix. DJ Mitch with It's a Noisy Pillars Tune 2 Ketchup Girls Mix, and that was requested by Crax Ultima. So thank you very much, Crax, for requesting that. And we are indeed nearing the end of the show. I just wanted to briefly highlight a short chat I had with Tub earlier today. Tub64, I believe it was, who said that he used to do a bit of radio in Berlin on the air. And I had a tiny bit of soapbox advice that I'd like to spread at large. In case anyone is listening in and want to be a radio DJ on Slay Radio, you can too, if you want to. Basically, the one thing I want to point out to Tub64 and would point out to other people is try to avoid two pitfalls, two common ones, which is the first one would be letting perfect get in the way of good. And I'm certainly guilty of that myself, especially when it comes to Plan Mix Play, because even though it's far from good or perfect, whenever I try to debut new features, I kind of want them to be at least semi-sparkly. But I do think they are sort of edging on good rather than perfect by far. And in the context of doing a show, obviously what I mean is, let's just reference the exchange me and Tub64 had. I hope he doesn't mind, which is he said something along the lines of, I don't I don't have an intro jingle or an outro jingle, and I don't have this or that. And I guess my view on that is, of course, well, that doesn't matter. Like, I don't have a fucking intro jingle. I use, what is it, Mr. USA. Like, that's barely a jingle as is. Agent USA, of course. And I don't have a proper outro jingle either. I just use a slow song. But, I get it. Listening to the greats, Boz as it were, or certain other people who do much better, well-produced shows. Equally professional, of course. We're all professionals here, but slightly better produced. And they have a bed as well. They have Immortal and Phased Based. They had a bed while talking. I will point out, and this is a bit of a little positive criticism for Phased Based and Immortal, maybe tweak your bed just a tiny bit lower. It was quite, like, it almost played as loud as a regular tune when you guys weren't saying anything, and that I would say is a little on the loud side. In fact, I'm a big fan of the uniformly low bed that's just kind of running in the background. In fact, I think I could even why don't I, if I pull in this, so now we're playing a little bit of Agent USA, and hopefully it isn't too it's not too loud. I think it's sort of something like this, I would say. In any case, that's sort of the loudness I would go for if I was you. Don't let good get in the way of, don't let perfect get in the way of good. If you want to do a show, just kind of, put something together and start off slow, basically. And case in point, in regards to the actual practical matters, if things haven't changed too much, Slay Radio, if you are keen to do a show live on the air, does require that you send in a sort of a demo tape thing. So the powers that be have a bit of an idea of what it is you're trying to do. And also, I think it's worthwhile because it A, shows that you're pretty serious about it, and B, kind of, again, gives people a chance to maybe come with some positive feedback for you before you kind of throw yourself off in the deep end. The other pitfall to not fall into, I would say, is people who put the cart way before the horse. So there are individuals who are like, I'm going to be a radio personality now, so I'll get myself an Instagram, and I'll set up a Facebook, and I'll do this, and I'll do that, and I'll have all these fans, and da-da-da-da, and that's the other side of the coin. Like, don't fall too deep in that one either. Just take it slow. Like, do a show, see how it went. If you want to do another, do another. Like, baby steps is basically what I'm trying to say there. And bit of info there for everybody. I'm going to play one last request, and then I'm going to wind up the show because we are very, very close to the ending here. And I'm also going to kill the bed. Boop. Mr. T, Star Force Nova, dance mix with a large capital X at the end. Shargo, you wanted that. And I'm more than happy to oblige. So take it away, MRT, with Star Force Nova. bit of Mr. T there, or MRT, with Star Force Nova Dance Mix requested by Shargo. And while I was perusing the local news, I was reminded of one last thing I didn't have on the script, but I did want to mention, which is Epic Games is taking on big boy Steam. If you guys recall, maybe like 10, 20 shows ago, I was basically doing a bit of plugging of a free game on the Epic Store via the Epic launcher, basically. And I forget... oh man, Shadow Complex. Yes, that was the name of the title. Which is kind of a 2D, 2.5D, well, technically a 2D and a 3D engine. So a 2D sort of Metroidvania type game. And that one was free for a while to download and play if you just got a hold of the Epic Games launcher. And for me, it was more than worthwhile getting that launcher just to play that game for free. And now that Epic has significantly increased the size of its war chest thanks to Fortnite, which by the way is only available through their launcher, I think they're now in a position to actually duke it out with Valve. And you can absolutely see this having an impact. Valve, for the first time since its inception, is now deviating from the typical and traditional 30-70 split of revenue between the store owner and the developers or / publishers. So it used to be, if you made a game, put it on Steam, every sale you made, they get a 30% cut and you get whatever is left. Now, if you, I believe, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but it's something along the lines of, if your game earns above 10 million, every dollar moving forward, you'll get 75% and they'll take 25. And from 50 million and onwards, the cut they take is only 20%, which is still quite a piece. And let's be honest, this amount of sales, like this sales number, really only applies to a very small percentage of developers and publishers, like maybe 1%, if even that. So, of course, there's a lot of criticism that this is barely helping the indie developers at all, which is true. It does not at all cater for the indie developers. This is them trying to prevent some of the last big boys from pulling off their platform. Conversely, Epic Games will offer a revenue split of 88% and 12%, which is obviously much preferable. In fact, I think they even have a deal in place where if you launch on their platform, maybe not even exclusively, maybe just at least at the same time as you launch everywhere else, they'll even waive the 5% fee that they cover for using the Unreal Engine. So there's yet another incentive there. So this sort of company duking it out is generally very good for the customers. And yeah, I find it really interesting to see. While I personally, as a consumer, probably prefer and like having all my games in one store, I know exactly what it leads to. It leads to a monopoly, which leads to much worse consumer conditions. So this sort of duking it out and multiple stores is actually in your favor. Anyway, guys, that's enough for me. It is now 2 minutes past the end times. And I'll be wrapping up the show. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Before I go, I would like to once again plug upcoming shows. Cracks Ultima on the 14th of December in the evening. Or wait, is that... would that actually be the day before? Let's see. It's the 6th of December. So it's probably the 13th of December, actually. Yes, my apologies. So on the 13th of December, for most people listening in the evening, Cracks Ultima has a show. That will be the Thursday. Boz has one on Friday on the 14th of December. And I have one on Sunday the 16th of December, where... for those of you who are still rubbing your noggin, wondering why it's in the evening as opposed to in the morning, because I happen to be in Europe at that point in time. I think that will probably be the last show of the year for me. Maybe I can squeeze one more in. It depends. But I'd rather not announce that at this time. So this was the first of 2 Christmas specials. There may be a bonus at the end. We will see. In the meantime, I want to thank everyone who's on Plan Mix Play, everyone who hung out there. I remember seeing Casrain, LP Chip, Cracks Ultima, Kraut Guy from the Dark, Shargo Immortal, and Mace Ace. Let me just see if I haven't forgotten anyone at all. Give me a moment while this very, very responsive system refreshes. No, Immortal was also in there as well. And of course, people on IRC, Tub64, Cracks Ultima again, Conductor, a couple other people. Thank you so much for tuning in. I had a great time. I hope you did too. Hope you learned a little bit something. And I'm going to leave you with Andy Gilmore and L-Man, the Robocop title, and let the fabulous, now semi-often working credits take us out. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Have a lovely Sunday. I'll see you soon.